Welcome to the Reggie McNeil Podcast, where we explore what it means to seek God's kingdom here on earth. Join us on our journey to become more aware of and encouraged by God's work in and around us.
Hey gang, I'm here with Leanne Hadley. Welcome back to the podcast. You're in for a great treat today. Leanne is just a ball of energy. As I met her back down the road a bit, she just so caught my attention with a way that she's impacting a particular group of people, actually, that we'll talk about. But Leanne, welcome to the podcast. And I'm going to let you tell about where you are and whatever else you want to say. We usually share the last 4 digits of our social security number with our listeners, just so that, you know, they can feel like they know us.
Didn't get our identity well. Good. All right. I'm Leanne Hadley. I'm so glad to be here. I'm an elder in the United Methodist Church, and I've been ordained since I was in my 20s. So I think that's 30 some years now that I've been working with children in the church primarily. And right now I work at Christ United Methodist Church in Louisville, Kentucky. I moved here from Colorado Springs, where I was the pastor for 25 years to children in that community. And I moved here to be close to my grandchildren who live in Lexington. So I'm really delighted.
What's the biggest surprise or moving from Colorado Springs to Louisville, Kentucky? I mean, that's a pretty good leap there.
The biggest surprise is how delicious tomatoes taste in the Midwest. I forgot how delicious tomatoes and corn taste. They do not taste this good in Colorado. I miss the mountains, but I have tomatoes and corn here, so I'll take the trade. Yeah,
well, good for you. I'm glad to know, and all of those. You've started now a war on our podcast about who has the best tasting vegetables here and around. Well, I listeners may be interested in a children's ministry. Really, I mean, but that's exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because when you talk about moving from a church-centric to a kingdom-centric bias in ministry, I mean, if we aren't thinking about how to, raise up the next generation of folks who are going to embrace that, then we're not thinking very far down the road. And it's pretty rare that I meet someone that in a program niche in a congregation that is doing as much as you are to really make sure that's happening. So I just want our listeners to hear about the ways that you are helping, church people, really, folks that are already inside, in many cases, begin to, and their children, and by next impact, their parents, and hopefully then eventually the congregation. So you're working at this thing from a very viral standpoint. I just want to hear what you're doing. I want our listeners to know what you're doing. So I'll be quiet now and let you tell us about what you're doing.
Okay. Well, I have always worked with children, and the longer I work with children, the more I realize that there's a problem. Not only do we not understand the spiritual lives of children, we don't think they belong in the kingdom until they become teenagers. So I bring a whole bias to this that says Jesus said it first. He didn't say, you should pay attention to children. He said, children are our leaders. So I have a bias. I think that children not only belong in the kingdom, but they're actually leaders in the kingdom. So, I start with that, and I respect them. I listen to them, and they help me grow spiritually more than we can even express. So that's my bias. That's where I start.
Good for you.
And I think that then what we do is we take it seriously. And so we pray with children. We do contemplative prayer with children. We teach them Bible stories. And then we don't have this model of, I'm the boss and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to impart knowledge into you. We truly believe that the child is a complete spiritual being. We're a spiritual being, and we come together, and in that sacred space where 2 are gathered, there is God. And then we tell the stories.
Yeah.
We tell the stories.
It's interesting because, it seems so much of, the Western church is determined to create spiritual customers or consumers. It sounds to me like you're actually trying to grow disciples. What an idea. and starting with the kids. So good for them and good for you. And I interrupted you. We're going to tell us some more of how you get at that.
No, from the first moment they come to the church, we say to them, you are a blessing. And because you are blessed, you are called to be a blessing to other people. And we're going to help you find your purpose. So every time we read a Bible story, we tell the story, and then they journal from age 3 up. They journal, and we say to them, what is God saying to you? What is God calling you to do? We don't tell them what God is saying in that story. They find it for themselves. And I'll tell you, their insights will blow your mind. And then we just do this process over and over and over. And then what we discovered is that children are the best carriers. Children are germy little people. If you're going to ever get the flu, it's going to be from your grandchild. If you're ever going to catch a cold, it's the same way with the Spirit of God. Like once they get it in them, they can't help but share it. So we see this thing called spontaneous sharing, which is where kids get so excited about what they're doing at church that they can't help but share it. So I'll give you an example. We bless our children. We use blessing balm, which is chapstick, but we call it blessing balm. And we simply make a little cross on their forehead or their hand every time they leave. And we say, you are a blessing. So in our school, we bless, children, and in the Sunday school, it's a pretty traditional program. We see kids of all ages, and we bless them. Well, we had a little girl go to the doctor with her mom, and while they were waiting, the little girl found her mother's chapstick and started blessing her mommy on the forehead, on the hand, saying, you're a blessing, you're a blessing. The doctor came in and said, what are you doing? And the little girl says, it's a blessing. The doctor said, really? He says, do you want me to bless you? The doctor says, yeah, I would like you to bless me. The little girl blesses the doctor. She says, I'll be right back. She goes out, she comes in with her whole staff, and they say, we all want blessings.
Wow.
So we have a little girl who's been blessed and then physically starts blessing other people. We have kids that get so excited about the Bible stories. We had a little girl who said to her mother, her mom was the school party mom, like going to do the Easter party. And she said, rather than just tell a story, could we read the book about Jesus? Could we tell that story? I love that story. So we can't keep these kids from sharing their faith. It's incredible.
We're kind of racing through this people of blessing thing as if everyone gets that. And so I just want to pause and pull that piece out, that thread out of the conversation here, the fabric, and just say, when the church has stepped into a narrative. I mean, the church hasn't been here forever. I talked to some folks that think the church is the fourth member of the Trinity, but we actually were created in time and in space and for time and space. And because we don't move, it's the kingdom that moves forward. The church just plays a role in it right now. But I say, we've stepped into that covenant that goes all the way back to Genesis 12. That Abrahamic covenant when, God cut the deal with Abe, said, I'm going to bless you. Now your job is to turn around and bless everybody that's not in your tribe. I mean, it's actually a very difficult passage to translate. But it basically means everybody who's not with you, people who run drugs off the coast, sacrificing kids to Molech, folks that aren't like you, Abe, that's who you're supposed to bless. So that is the basic content of what it means to be the people of God. That's never changed, and so it's fascinating that we have a discipleship or people in church that wonder, how when you say, well, you're supposed to be church, and they have no idea what being church means. It means being a person of blessing. I mean, and good Lord, could our world need it right now? I mean, we're so divided in every other way. And what if we actually stepped into that space? So I didn't want the folks, what you're teaching these kids at a very early and shaping them, not just teaching them, shaping them to be people of blessing that's helping them know what it means to be church, not go to church. So, well, keep rocking and rolling, because I mean, you're telling the good stuff, and I'll just stop every now and then and say, hey, did you catch that?
Thank you. I agree with you with the Abraham thing. I think when God showed up, like the first lesson that monotheistic God teaches is you're a blessing. I mean, that has to be the foundation. That's why we use it with children. It's like the first lesson is you are blessed to be a blessing. Like that's lesson one. And I think, when the children are brought to Jesus, the same thing. He doesn't train them. He doesn't take that as a moment to instruct them. He lays his hands on them and blesses them.
Yeah.
They're a blessing. I just love that it's in from all the way to Genesis to when the children come to Jesus. And there we have it. So we're just carrying on that thread. You're exactly right. We just believe it. So the blessing is really critical. And I'll tell you, and for parents, I mean, it's the easiest thing. Children start carrying that home, and then it becomes a language. The parents start seeing their children as a blessing, and the children see their parents as a blessing. It's a shift in the way we begin to see each other. You're not my friend or my enemy. You're a blessing. I'm a blessing. We're equal in that.
Isn't that fabulous? I mean, going into teenage years, as you grow out of that childhood phase, to have that perspective, that totally changes the conversation, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that we have to watch what we do in Christian education with children, because I think that we kind of train people from an early age to feel like someday you will be a blessing. So, with children, it's like, I'm the teacher, and someday you might get to be the teacher. Someday you might get to be the preacher. And then we're mad at our congregations when they say, well, I'm not there yet. I'm not as smart as my preacher. I haven't been trained in seminary. But with our children, they learn it pretty quick, and they are as confident as can be. And I love that. I love that kind of, that attitude.
Yeah.
We take this so seriously. We're like, we're not waiting for them to start being kingdom agents. We're saying, what can you do right now? You're 2 years old. What's your purpose? Is it to love your friends? Is it to become, what is your purpose? And they just grow up in this atmosphere of purpose and of blessing, and they go become it.
And what you're talking about as a child, that makes it make more sense when Jesus says you can't enter the kingdom, unless you become like that. And we translate that into our normal idea of a child: unprepared, underdeveloped, not quite there. And so we hear that from Jesus as, we're still in preschool or whatever. We never graduate out of, and so, but your notion of fully formed, fully capable, fully, ready to roll, rock and roll spiritual entity, makes that comment by Jesus make a lot more sense.
Yeah. At the beginning of COVID, I did this thing called Bible Playtime with Leanne. And 5 days a week for 6 months at 10 o'clock in the morning, I got on the Zoom and I taught a Bible story to kids, and we played together and we learned our Bible. And, and parents keep saying, that kept me going. But what they don't realize is that gave me a reason to get out of bed. I couldn't wait to get dressed and come out here and see those kids. We had so much fun together. We learned the Bible, but we just went through the Bible. I had a little beginner's Bible, and we just went through all the stories. We made it all the way through the Bible.
Wow.
In 6 months with the big stories. And at one point, I'll never forget, a little girl. I think it was when Jesus was born, and Herod is getting ready to, try to kill him. And she says, and she's little, first grade. She says, what on earth? Why do people get power and then get mean? What is happening here? Wow. And I thought, that is deep theology. That is biblical exegesis. That's all the stuff you want to be able to do. And it's a first grader. Wow. And so we pondered, what does happen to people that get power? I think Jesus spoke into that. Like, what happens to you when you get too much power? So we're already pondering those things in first grade. What will that girl do in ninth grade?
And look at the character that builds, because she has power somewhere, and how will she exercise that? Is it, it's a antidote to being a bully, so this girl's not going to bully, and maybe she looks after someone who is being bullied, because that's being built into her. Well, what are you seeing happen with the parents as a result? Now, you've been at your current assignment how many months?
I've been at Christ Church. I've been here 5 years. 5 years. I started as a consultant, and then I just never left. I just stayed. So
yeah. Well, I think I said months because I only met you recently, although I've known the church for a while. And so you've been there 5 years. What are the results that you're seeing in families? As these kids virally infect their families?
Well, we're seeing an increased spirituality in our families, and we're finding a confidence in our parents. They're stepping up to volunteer. They're feeling more confident because if your child can do it, you'll do it. And, the best example I can give you is we have a school, a large school. It's a preschool, and I think we have 225 kids. So 200 families, 150 families. Most of them are not going to church anywhere. They come to a church preschool, but they have no intention of coming to church.
Right.
Or some of them go to other denominations or whatever, and so we don't, and when I first got to the church 5 years ago, they said, how do we get those families to come to our church?
Yeah.
And I said, well, why do you want them to come to the church? Well, we want their kids to have Sunday school. So then I said, well, why don't we just start faith formation with the kids?
Right.
So we started what I call, I have a little book, Sacred Circle Time. We started Sacred Circle Time every day in the classroom. We didn't know if parents would quit, withdraw their kids, say this is too much religion, stop throwing it, crumbing it down their throat. But we tell a story, we bless the children. Immediately, the parents started saying, what's going on? What is this blessing? I love that much. Can I see a blessing? Can I come be part of it? So parents were drawn into that. And we had stories of one of our little girls in the nursery. So in the baby nursery that did Sacred Circle Time every day, went home and was saying to her mom, Bubba, Bubba. And the mom's like, what's she doing? What's she doing? And finally the mom figured out she's looking for a Bible.
Uh-huh.
And then the mother comes and says, I haven't opened my Bible in, I don't know, a million years, started coming to our Bible story. These children are little missionaries, and not because we're brainwashing them, but because they love the Bible. So they go home and they're looking for a Bible. Another mom was reading her Bible, and the little girl said, are you doing Sacred Circle Time, Mommy? And the mom said, I guess I am. And she says, can I sit on your lap while you do it? We're just having story after story. So our school, I'm not going to take all the credit for our school. It's amazing. We've got a wonderful head of school, Colleen. She's amazing. But I will say that we are known now as a church that not only offers schooling to children, but spirituality. And we have a waiting list that's longer than it's ever been.
Yeah.
And I think it is because parents know this is a good thing for their children. And we've had more and more families join the church, come to the church, or go to their churches and say, we need more for our children. Look what we're doing over here in the school. So we've seen tremendous growth in parents. I think it's easier. It's not like, do you want to teach Sunday school? It's going to be this hard thing. It's like, do you want to come and be part of this?
Right.
And our teachers, because of the journaling time, because after we do the story and then we answer the questions and ask them, the teachers are having spiritual experiences while they're teaching. So it's not like, well, I don't want to be with kids, I want to be learning. They are learning.
Yes.
They're experiencing God, and that is transformative stuff.
Oh, and that's giving them life. I mean, that's the energy that keeps them going. So, instead of we're just putting people through traces, of activity. But what, you said something there that I would like to make a comment about. Even a lot of the folks that I've in this series that we're interviewing are talking about serving the community. And I want to say, based on what you're saying and the realities of it, don't cut kids out of the service corps. I mean, I've been telling my clients for years, take your kids, get your kids with you doing what you do as much as possible. Now there's some roles and jobs you're doing that the kids can't participate in, but gosh, family serving together is one of the most powerful transformational pieces we've got in the whole discipleship toolkit. So I didn't know if you're seeing that happen much, or if that's going on in your city.
We're really intentional about it, actually. A fourth of what we try to offer is what we call soulful self-discovery. So it's like we do mission with you, and then we want you to find your own mission and go do it. So we were spending, Vacation Bible School has gotten nuts. Decorations in our budget could cost up to $4,000.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
decorations.
Yeah.
We looked at that and we said, oh, you've got to be kidding me. What could we do missionally with $4,000?
Right.
So we changed our vacation Bible school. We call it Shepherd's Camp. And we prepare to go out in the community, and we work with community agencies, and we put kids, we load them in buses. We learn about the agency for 3 days. And on the 4th day, we go to the agency and we deliver whatever it is that we've been doing. And it is transformative. And our little ones, our little preschoolers, they do a program, and we call it Snack and Chat for our shut-in members. We bring them to the church. 4-year-olds are serving them dinner, asking them, have you read any good books lately? Doing a play for them. It's the sweetest thing in the world. And what we've discovered from that is that our children get so excited. They find their niche, and they're spontaneously, again, starting their own missions.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Well, it's alive. It is viral.
Well, yes, and again, you're not only are you modeling, you're inculcating this into the life so that it's a natural. I mean, if you grow up doing this, then you don't have to have someone preaching at you from the pulpit telling you, you ought to care about your neighbor. I mean, you grew up caring about your neighbor, and figuring out how to be a blessing to the people around you. I mean, what a cool deal. You're just doing such great work. I mean, even in your doctoral studies, some of the work you did was on this whole transformation. So adults, this doesn't stop with kids, does it? I mean, what as adults helps us to really be an intentional follower of Jesus more?
Yeah, in my doctoral thing, I came up with this model of spiritual transformation that I teach, but more recently, I gathered with 80 congregations across the United States, and we studied how do we measure spiritual transformation? All we do is count, right? So the way we say, oh, well, if we get 400 kids in a Sunday school, we're doing transformative work. Right. That may or may not be happening. It could just be babysitting. It could be a zoo. It could be anything with it. Can we measure it? And so we worked together, and we did this whole project, and we came up with these 3 tools of measurement, and that's how we measure what we do. We count our kids. Of course we do. We turn in the numbers. Everybody cares how many do you have. And I even say to people, how many did you have? Yeah. But more importantly, we try to use these 3 measurement tools. And they are, if you are doing spiritually transformative work in your setting with children, with adults, with anybody, is anybody talking about it or not? If nobody except the pastor or the leader of it is saying, hey, we're doing transformative work, it's not happening. You should have people speaking out about it.
Back to your spontaneous conversation that you talked about earlier. Yeah, good.
Yes. So the stories, and then spontaneous sharing comes out of that. They start doing it. So the stories are talking about it. Spontaneous sharing is doing it. And then the third thing really surprised us, and that's that when we do this thing collectively together, we're all changed. So it isn't adults changing the lives of children or pastors changing the lives of lay people. Everybody is changing. Everybody's growing. Now that is the kingdom of God. It's alive. It's organic. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
That's what excites me.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. So give us those 3 tools again, or those 3 ways that you get at a new scorecard for spiritual transformation.
So when we do an event, we end it and we say, is anybody talking about it? Are there stories? Are parents calling us and telling us about it? Is anybody talking about this or not, besides us who thought it was a great idea? Right. Are there stories? Is anybody spontaneously sharing something they learned here? Are they taking it someplace else? We bless children. Are they blessing anybody? And where are they sharing that? And then the third tool is, were we changed? Are we changing? Because if you come together and you do God's work, you grow. So it's not finite, it's eternal.
Those are great insights and ways that people can take what you just shared and figure out how that looks in their context. It's pretty gutsy though, because you're actually looking at outcomes, not just inputs, and results and impact, not just busyness and activity. And of course, I've told folks all along, if I were the devil, and I've been accused, I mean, in fact, I've been nominated and elected in some circles. I wouldn't tell Christians not to, and Jesus followers not to do good stuff. I would just get them doing so much good stuff that they really didn't even, they didn't have the energy to develop. And is kingdom as you and I have chatted about the kingdom, and my notion that the best way to say it, it's about the life, the very robust life that God wants us to live across the whole spectrum of human existence. Then what you're doing is helping kids live into it. They're helping their parents live into it. That's helping the church live into it and the community live into it. I mean, it's this concentric circle of impact. You're doing great work, Leanne. And I wanted people to understand how kingdom thinking has to impact all that we're doing. We can't just run programs as usual and expect this to happen. There's got to be an intentionality like you bring to it. And I could just as easily, interviewed a student minister or a family minister or someone else who has this responsibility, and I may. What I wanted folks to see is the intentionality that you bring, that these folks become little viral kingdom agents, transforming the world.
Thank you. And I would say that if we're going to build the kingdom of God, we have to include the children. You know, I just read Jesus where he says, like there's the yeast in the bread. I'm telling you, the children are the yeast. Don't leave the yeast out. They are the yeast of the bread. And we have forgotten that. And I think it's why we have some flatbread happening out there.
Tell us, if folks want to know more about what you're doing and the work there, what's the best way to get a hold of you or to be in touch?
The best way is to either visit my website, which is leanne-hadley.com, or you can email me at leannehadley@me.com. And I love hearing from you, and I'd love for anybody to reach out. I could talk about this stuff day and night. Call me, text me, whatever. I don't care.
She's helping folks in my own constellation of clients already. She is very, she really means what she's saying. Thanks for taking time out today to have this chat. Way to go, girl. You're just doing it.
Thanks. You for having me. Thank you so much.